Hello and good day, geometry. I hope you did your wrist exercises this morning because we have quite a few notes to take today. Max will put them away for now. Take out your binder. We're learning stuff. Okay. We've talked about all these relationships that involve parallel lines. Today we're going to actually name them. So when we start doing proofs, which we will be doing proofs in PO24, you actually have names to associate to the steps that you do, right? So we've been building our toolbox. We've got like linear pair postulate, vertical angles theorem, right angles congruence theorem, et cetera, et cetera. This is a whole new batch of tools you can add to that box. So we can do proofs, then you have things that you can defend it with. So the corresponding angles postulate, or the CAP, just proves to you that math was cool even before you kids made CAP cool, says that if parallel lines are cut by a transversal, I can write that word cut a little cleaner. There we go. Cut by a transversal, then the corresponding angles are congruent. If parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the corresponding angles are congruent. So the key words here, you've got parallel, right? Otherwise, corresponding angles are just simply corresponding angles. If the lines are parallel, it means they're going to be congruent. And you've got corresponding angles. What was that phrase that we talked about last week or the week before that had to do with corresponding angles? What are angles that correspond? What's their relationship? Locationally. Kylie? Yeah, they're the same location at each of the vertices that you have, right? Here are two parallel lines. Here's our transversal coming down here. Corresponding angles would be like those two, that upper left, right? A second pair of corresponding angles might be the bottom right angles here. Okay, so it's that same location, and when those lines are parallel, it means that they're congruent, right? Alternate interior angles theorem says that if parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the alternate interior angles are congruent. If parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the alternate interior angles are congruent. What's the relationship of alternate interior angles? Tell me where I can find them. Kylie.
On the inside of
Yep. In between, on the interior of our two parallel lines on alternate or opposite sides of the transversal. Question so far? Next one. If parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the alternate exterior angles are congruent. That is the alternate exterior angles theorem. Yes, way to make a conjecture. Well done, Damien. Where might I find alternate exterior angles? Ellen. Yes, outside of our parallel lines on the exterior, and they are on alternate sides of the transversal. Okay, all of these relationships we've already written down, we've already identified in a previous objective. Now we just get to write about them. Any questions? Next one. If parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Remember, this is the one that is different, supplementary. Okay, all the other relationships are congruent except for consecutive interior angles. They are supplementary, meaning they add to be 180. So where might I find consecutive interior angles? The word interior means inside of our parallel lines, right? And in this case, the word consecutive means the same side of the transversal. So this one and this one are consecutive interior angles, and they are supplementary, not congruent. They are supplementary. Questions so far? Damien? Yes, Damien, because there's a whole other flip side to this. If we have the corresponding angles postulate, which notice is an if-then statement, and now down here we have the corresponding angles converse. What do we remember about conditional statements and the converse?
No.
Right, so the if and the that are then flipped. Now, if remember, when we talked about converses initially, the converse for a statement is always false. This converse will also be true, which means this falls under that biconditional statement where it works both ways, okay? Just to say that if, oh, look at all this, good stuff. If, do I? No. If corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines cut by the transversal are parallel. If corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines cut by the transversal are parallel. Okay, I'm going to show you the difference between the corresponding angles postulate and the converse shortly here. Okay, whenever we find something out, I like to use red and green colors. Red is what we know. Green is what we can conclude. Okay, so in the corresponding angles postulate up at the top of the page, where it says if parallel lines are cut by a transversal, that means we know that the lines are parallel. Remember those little arrows or triangles mean the lines are parallel? And we can conclude that corresponding angles, such as that pair right there, are congruent. Okay? That top one at the top of the page allows us to say when we know we have parallel lines, we can conclude corresponding angles are congruent. This one says that when we have corresponding angles that are congruent, so now this time we're told the angles are congruent, that allows us to conclude that the lines are parallel. Okay, so they work both ways in helping us determine, okay, we know this, therefore we can conclude this, or it works the other way. We know this, therefore we can conclude this. I should say we know this, so we can conclude that. We know that, so we can conclude this. It works both ways. Kylie. When we get to proving triangles are congruent or angles are congruent, if you kind of look ahead to what's coming up next as far as homework-wise, you flip the page, you see the diagrams there. I'm going to be asking you to use these relationships to solve for angles. If I went one step further and said, prove the angle measure that you find, you could use these to then prove it. You could say, because I've got parallel lines, because these are corresponding angles, I know they are congruent angles. So if one equals 85 degrees, the other one will be 85 degrees as well. Okay? The alternate interior angles converse says if alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines cut by the transversal are parallel. Again, it is the opposite of what the alternate interior angles postulate does. Okay? The alternate interior angles postulate says if you have the parallel lines, you can conclude the angles are congruent. This one says if you know the angles are congruent, you can prove the lines are parallel. Damien. What job? Oh, I just said that. I made that up. Why would I? Yeah. Yes. For a pass. All right. Last week of the try, use them or lose them now. Alternate exterior angles converse. If alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines cut by the transversal are parallel. Again, it allows us to do the opposite of what the alternate exterior angles postulate does. Theorem, actually. I think that was a theorem. The next one, consecutive interior angles converse says that if consecutive interior angles are supplementary, then the lines cut by the transversal are parallel. Just think how many calories you're burning right now. Just rolling through them. Exercise and math go hand in hand. Finally, this one is new in that it doesn't have a partner up at the top. The transitive property of parallel lines. We know what the transitive property is, right? If A is B and B is C, then A is C, right? So this one basically says if A is parallel to B and B is parallel to C, those two double lines like that looks like an 11, okay, is the mathematical symbol for a parallel. So if A is parallel to B and B is parallel to C, then A is parallel to C. Okay? Basically, if one line is parallel to two different lines, then different lines are parallel as well. Okay, if A is parallel to B and B is parallel to C, then A is parallel to C. Where you'd see something like this would be when you've got more than two lines. Folks, shh. Where you see this is when you have more than two lines all cut by the same transversal. So in this case, now we have like three pairs or three sets of corresponding angles, right? All three of those angles would be congruent because they all correspond. All three lines are parallel, cut by the same transversal. Damien. Yes. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, comments, congratulations, criticisms. Oh, thank you. How long has it been on there? Oh. Your homework is going to be from. I was not given the word ahead of time. I don't care. I was not. Oh, it's right. I didn't have. He was. Did he confirm the word? What was it? That's what I'm kind of guessing. I'm just learning who I can trust. Page 165. Vince, quiet please. 3 through 15. And because you tried to lie to me, 19 through 21. I'm punishing the group. 28 and 35. That's our math.